everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup episode. Today we are talking about Katherine Knight. If you don't already know that name, now you do, and you will not forget it after this video. Katherine Knight was a woman known for violence. She would react with violence. If she was sad, she would react with violence, and this just spiraled out of control her entire life. And it did ultimately result in her murdering one of her partners. Now, she didn't just murder one of her partners, she actually dismembered him, decapitated him and skinned him, and then tried to serve him to his children as a meal. Yeah, this woman's sick, so you need to strap in, get ready, get cozy, maybe get a drink, but I wouldn't recommend food for this one, or at least no for the last 5 minutes. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy my videos. Put the notification bell on so you don't miss when I upload. I do upload 2 to 3 times per week, new case every single time, and it's a mix. We have serial killers, we have one-off killers, we have spree killers, we have them all. We have them all. Any case recommendations, leave them down below or send them to my email up on the screen now for you. If you want to know anything that I've used on my face today, that will all be linked down below for you as well. But without any further ado, let's get into the case of Katherine Knight. So Katherine Mary Knight was born on the 25th of October 1955, and she honestly had such a turbulent, troubled, horrendous childhood. She had her mum, Barbara Rohan, who was married to Jack Rowan at the time, and they had had 4 sons together already. But when Katherine came along, she was the result of an adulterous relationship, shall we say, between Barbara Rowan and Ken Knight. At the point where Barbara had this affair with Ken Knight, they were living in Aberdeen, New South Wales, which they lived in quite a small town. And you know what it's like when you live in a small town? Gossip just gets spread round everyone. Everyone knows your business. And at this point in this small town, when people heard of Barbara's actions, they wanted her gone. Not in life, just out of their town. And honestly, I think the thing that made this scandal so huge throughout the community was the fact that Ken Knight, who Barbara had an affair with, was actually Jack Rowan's friend and co-worker. So people were like, what the are you up to? So as I'd said, at this point, the town of Aberdeen, they want Barb gone. So Barb's like, right, okay, I will leave, but Ken, you're coming with me. If my husband's leaving me because of our affair, you know, that innocent affair that we had, then you're going to come with me. We're going to move together. So 2 of Barbara's older sons remain with Jack Rowan. Then her 2 younger sons are sent to go and live with their aunt in Sydney. So once they had moved away, Barbara and Ken, I'm sorry, it sounds like a really bad version of Ken and Barbie. Barbara and Ken, Ken and Barbara, Ken and Barb. But once they had moved away, they ended up having another 4 children together. Barbara at this point is sporting 8 kids. That's a whole lot of children. But they have 4 children together, and this does include a set of twin girls who was born in 1955, Katherine Knight being one of the twin girls. At one point I'm going to say Barbie and Ken. I know it, because it's there. When Katherine Knight was just 4 years old, Jack Rowan would end up passing away, which resulted in Barbara's 2 older sons moving in with Barbara and Ken in Tenterfield. Or, you know, Barbie and Ken. I feel like I'm starting to look like the Riddler out of Batman, but stick with it. Hopefully it all comes together in the end. Now, unfortunately, Ken was a very violent and abusive person to live with and be with. And it was reported that Ken would rape Barbara on several occasions every single day. And it does actually say that he would rape her up to 10 times. Now, with this going on, Barbara would confide in her daughters, so Katherine and her sister, and tell her all these intimate sexual details about what was happening to her. She would also tell Katherine and her sister how much she hated sex, how much she hated men, and just really distilled these sort of views onto her children. Now, it's worth noting that one point in the future, Katherine wanted to speak to her mum about something that she was going through. She was with a partner who was trying to get her to partake in sexual acts that she wasn't comfortable with whatsoever. And I guess Katherine maybe thought like, well, my mum's confided in me my whole life, so why can't I confide in her about what I'm going through? So she tells her mum about this guy who's wanting her to partake in these sexual acts and that she's really not comfortable with it. Barbara turns around to Katherine and says, stop complaining and get on with it. Like, I'm sorry, but didn't you just spend your daughter's whole childhood confiding in her about your sexual activities and also your sexual abuse that you were suffering? I get that you had to confide in someone, but a child is not it. Is not it. And then for that child to feel comfortable enough to come to you later in life for support and you tell her to get on with it? Nah. No. Now, Katherine did also claim that she was sexually abused on multiple occasions throughout her life, but she did state that her dad did not sexually abuse her, but it was said that her older brothers did. Now, family members and friends of Katherine's, at first they completely doubted this because they were like, her nature as a person is just giving liar. But family would go on later and confirm these claims and say that no, she was sexually abused. Now, Katherine did say that this sexual abuse would go up until she turned 11 years old. Now, growing up, apart from Katherine's own sister, she wasn't really close to any other family members apart from her uncle Oscar Knight, who was actually like a horse champion. Did I just say a horse champion? I meant a champion horseman. Sorry. Obviously, with him being the only person she was really close to out with her sister, when he committed suicide in 1969, this completely broke Katherine's heart. Like, she was devastated and it was really hard for her to move on from this. The one person that she loved and trusted was no longer here. Katherine has maintained ever since her uncle committed suicide that his ghost is still very much with her and watching over her and checking in with her. And I mean, think of what you want. Everyone else has like different beliefs, but you know, maybe if any of you ever see me pick up an eyeshadow brush with green on it again, please kindly remind me of this Riddler look that I had going on, because like, I'm worried for myself right now. So after the passing of Katherine's uncle Oscar, the family did move from Tenterfield back to Aberdeen, where Katherine would attend Muswellbrook High School. Now, Katherine was known for being a bit of a bully. Actually, not even a bit of a bully, she was like a really severe bully, especially to small children. It was said that she would almost enjoy terrorising them, and she really liked people to be scared from her, and people were. She was really intimidating. Now, it was said that Katherine had assaulted one little boy with a weapon, and then Katherine herself had actually got injured because a teacher had to react in self-defence when she had attacked a teacher. Katherine was also described as being like very black and white, so she was either rageful or a model student. I just can't imagine a model student coming out of Katherine, but who am I to judge? Now, Katherine had actually left school before she could even read or write. So she left school at the age of 15 to go and work in a clothing shop, and then she got herself her dream job. Guess what this dream job was? Working in a slaughterhouse. Yeah, in a slaughterhouse. She loved it. That was the dream. She loved it. And what would she be doing in this slaughterhouse? She was cutting the internal organs out of all the animals. Dream job. So Katherine was extremely good at her dream job, and she ended up being promoted to working in the boning room, and she was actually gifted her own very set of butcher knives, which she just loved. She adored them. She hung them above her bed because you never know when you might need them. And in fact, Katherine said she wanted to keep them handy, just in case she needed them. Now, having her butcher knives either hanging above her bed or next to her bed was something that she would keep doing right up until her incarceration. I just can never imagine a situation where you go over to someone's house and it's a positive thing when they whip out their knife collection and show you it very excitedly. I would be very worried. So let's talk about David Stanford Kellet. Now, it's said that Kellet was really struggling with alcoholism due to some really traumatic incidents that happened in front of him whilst he worked at a railway. The first thing that happened was his best friend was actually killed in a shunting accident. I didn't know what this was, so when I looked it up, I thought I would just include a basis of what it is. So it's basically when you're moving trains from one line to another. He was killed whilst doing this. Now, the other incident was when he had been rescuing injured people from a school bus that had been struck by a train in Kempsey, and unfortunately in this accident 6 children had been killed, and the trauma that he experienced and suffered from that incident alone just sent him over the edge. Unfortunately, Kellet would lose his job due to his behaviour and his performance completely deteriorating after these traumatic incidents. Like, I totally get it. Mines would too. Do you know what I mean? He's just witnessed the most horrendous things. I hope at least that they maybe tried to get him help before just letting him go, but I couldn't really find that online. However, soon after, he was able to get work at the Aberdeen slaughterhouse. Who works there, I wonder? But whilst he was working there, he actually became very good friends with one of Katherine Knight's brothers. And it was also said that, like, if Kellet ever got in any fights at work, Katherine would jump in to defend him, but not just like argue, like she would jump in, fists up, ready to go. Katherine was also very well known for, if someone upset her, she would automatically resort to violence, no questions. Nothing. She would just jump right in with the fists. It's probably no surprise, but David and Katherine did wind up getting married in 1974. To enter their wedding ceremony, Katherine really wanted them to ride in on a motorbike, specifically her motorbike. So on their wedding day, they arrive, Katherine's driving the motorbike, and then David's riding bitch, like on the back seat. That to me sounds funny. Is that judgment? That's judgmental. I'm sorry, it's not funny. It's not funny. Now, it is worth saying that even when they just pulled up to the wedding, they were both drunk as a skunk, like steaming drunk. And later that night, Katherine would actually try to strangle David whilst he slept. I was thinking, you know, a wedding day, happiest day of your life, why would you end up wanting to strangle your new husband? Turns out, David had the audacity to fall asleep after having sex only 3 times. Only 3 times. A lot of people don't even have sex on a wedding night because they're so tired, but 3 times? Katherine wanted at least 5. Although it could be said that Katherine just wanted to start as she meant to go on, because this whole marriage that they had was based on abuse, mostly from Katherine's side, so she was just starting the wedding the way she wanted the whole relationship to be. Now, Kellet arrives home late one night because he had actually got into the final of like a darts competition, so he's buzzing to get in, tell Katherine all about it. Katherine, she ain't having any of it. You're late. You're late. So when he got home, greeted by Katherine, not feeling like a loving wife, she had burned all of his clothes, threw away all of his possessions, and then proceeded to hit him over the head with a frying pan. Now, when I read this, I cackled. I thought it was hilarious because I was just picturing like Rapunzel when she hits Flynn Rider with a frying pan, but apparently it was quite serious. Like, he had to go over to the neighbour's house and get help. Like, his neighbours had to take him to hospital, and then it was found out that he had a severe skull fracture. So Rapunzel all this time was abusing Flynn Rider quite the bit with the frying pan. However, obviously Katherine loves him, adores him, convinces him not to press charges, and he doesn't. Now, moving on to May of 1976, Katherine has just given birth to her and Kellet's daughter, Melissa Ann. Now, after the birth of Melissa Ann, Kellet actually moved to Queensland to be with another woman. Katherine, devastated, right? Absolutely devastated. So she's out with Melissa Ann one day, like pushing her in the pram, and she's seen like violently like pushing it, and then she actually goes to throw the pram. People see this and report her, and then she was admitted to St Elmo's Hospital in Tamworth, basically for her mental health. Like, she was really struggling, and I don't know if it was maybe like postnatal depression or postnatal psychosis, like something pretty serious to make her do that. And I do genuinely believe at this point that she was just in desperate need of some help. So then several weeks later, Katherine is released from the St Elmo hospital and she's out again with Melissa Ann pushing her in the pram. And this time she takes Melissa Ann to a railway track and lays Melissa Ann on the track. Yeah. She then goes into town and steals an axe and goes around threatening to murder like several people that are local in the town. Luckily, there was one man who was able to find out where Melissa Ann was. He went to the railway track, he was able to save her. I think the train was late or it was due a couple of minutes later, so he got there like just in time. Thank God. After this, Katherine was again admitted to St Elmo, but said to have a very speedy recovery because she was able to just sign herself out the next day. And that was it. So, days later, after this, Katherine sets off to find Kellet, right? So she's on her way. She's like, I'm bringing this guy back home, whether he wants to or not. So she sets off to find him, and she slashes a woman's face randomly because she demanded that this woman take her to Queensland to find Kellet. The woman refused, obviously, like she doesn't know who Katherine is or who Kellet is. And then Katherine actually goes on to threaten to murder the mechanic who fixed Kellet's car before he left, because in her mind, this mechanic was the reason he was able to escape. So the police do wind up arresting Katherine at this point, and she was sent to a mental institution. And I guess because what's been going on has been so severe, they did notify her mother-in-law of the events that have transpired. So Kellet's mum, Katherine's mother-in-law, she then tells Kellet what's happened, and he feels dreadful because in his mind, he's what's caused this. Him leaving her has caused her to have a mental break. So he decides that he's going to go back home to Aberdeen and he's going to be there to support his mum whilst they look after Katherine. And with him moving back to Aberdeen, he had actually split up with his girlfriend that he moved to Queensland for. Moves back for Katherine. So then on the 6th of March 1980, Kellet and Katherine, they have another daughter and they call her Natasha Marie. And then in 1984, Katherine leaves Kellet, moves out, and first of all she goes to live with her parents in Aberdeen. Then she decided that she wanted to rent a house nearby in Muswellbrook. And honestly, when I read this, I was kind of shook because Katherine went to extreme lengths to get Kellet back, and now she's the one that's left him. Make it make sense? I don't know if it does. So Katherine had uprooted her life and she went back to working in the slaughterhouse, her dream job, the career that she absolutely loved. But a year later, she did end up severely injuring her back, and she ended up claiming like a disability pension. So now she didn't need to rent accommodation close to her work. The government ended up giving her a housing commission residence in Aberdeen. So Katherine then went on to meet a 38-year-old David Saunders in 1986. A few months after they had met, he moved in with her and her daughters. Now, although he moved in with Katherine, he did make the decision to keep his own apartment. Now, listen, let's just get it out there. This apartment was in a place called either Scone or Scone. Now in Scotland, we would call a place that's spelled Scone, Scone. And I don't know how that would work in Australia because I was trying to do it with an accent. I was like, Scone, 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 Scone. I don't know what sounds better because everything sounds better with an Australian accent, even though my accent is terrible, right? But I don't know, did I just call it Scone? Scone? We only have to say it a couple of times, right? So bear with, we're going with Scone. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. So whenever David was not around, Katherine would get really, really jealous and start accusing him of cheating on her with other women. This would result in a big massive argument. David would go back to his apartment, Katherine would beg him to come back home, and the cycle continues. Now, just a trigger warning for animal killing here. In May of 1987, Katherine would slit the throat of David's dingo pup in front of him, and the reason that she did this was a warning to him of what she was capable of if he did cheat on her or if he did try to leave her. And then after she had slit the throat of the dingo pup, she then proceeded to knock him unconscious with the frying pan. Like, Rapunzel, take a day off, babe. This is too much. So in 1988, Katherine would give birth to a third daughter named Sarah. And with this, it prompted David to put a deposit down in the house. And I know a lot of people would be like, well, he has been knocked out by a frying pan more times than I've had hot dinners. And she also slit the throat of his dingo pup. Why is he still with her? Abusive relationships are not black and white. It's not easy to just leave someone. And he was probably in fear of his life and their children's life. I mean, come on. She is capable of anything, this woman, as we'll see. So please, like, don't question why he stayed with her, because you just never know what the circumstances are really like for someone. So anyway, he's put down a deposit on this house, and then in 1989, Katherine had paid off the deposit once her workers' compensation came through. So everything could be on the up and up, but it's not. And once the deposit was paid off, Katherine was like so excited to get decorating, because now she could have her house exactly as she wanted it and just have it absolutely perfect for her. So Katherine has somewhat of an acquired taste. Not something I would go for, but she did decorate with rusty animal traps, animal skins, skulls, bones, horns, leather jackets, old boots, machetes, rakes and pitchforks. But I don't really know the vibe that she was going for, but it was very much given no animals welcome. It's the only way I can describe it. And like, we've not even heard, like, is it a bassinet? Is that a bear trap? Or does it lie on one of the animal skins? Do they cover themselves with animal skins at night? Like, unanswered questions that I really want to find out. Also worth noting that with this decoration that she had done, there was literally no space that wasn't covered, and this included like ceilings, the walls, everywhere. And of course, all items used were real animal carcass. Real skulls, real horns, real skin, everything was real. So after another argument, Katherine was pretty raging with Saunders. So she proceeded to hit him in the face with an iron and stab him in the abdomen with scissors. Yeah, just normal stuff, you know, just typical argument things that take place. So of course, after this, what's that smell? My makeup brush smells funny. I've started now. And also my cat wants out, so BRB. Right, so anyway, at this point he moves back to Scone? I don't know, Scone. He moves back to Scone, and then he returns home to Aberdeen. When he returns, however, Katherine has cut up all his clothes. We're kind of used to this by now. If you argue with Katherine, you're going to come home to no clothing garments, shall we say. David Saunders ends up going like back into hiding. Like, he is scared for his life at this point. Like, Katherine, she is just too much. And Katherine did try to find him. She was asking everyone where he was, but no one would uncover his whereabouts, because I think they were all scared for him as well. Rightfully so. So David returns at one point because he really wants to see his daughter, but when he returns, he finds out that Katherine Knight had already been to the police and told the police she was scared that David was going to do something to her and to her daughter. So she had taken out an AVO, which is an apprehended violence order, which basically prohibits him from going near Katherine or his daughter. In 1991, Katherine wound up becoming pregnant by a former slaughterhouse co-worker. His name was John Chillingworth, and she gave birth the following year to a son called Eric. Now, their relationship actually went on to last 3 years until Katherine Knight left him for a man that she had been having an affair with, John Price. And this is where the story gets even worse. So John Price was born on the 4th of April 1955, and by the time he had met Katherine, he already had 3 children. So anyone who spoke about John Price said that he was a terrific guy. They actually referred to him as a terrific bloke, and he was liked by absolutely everyone. Now, his own marriage did end in 1988. His youngest daughter went with his former wife, but then his two older daughters came to live with him and Catherine. And at first, they really liked Catherine. Like, there was no issues at this point. So it does say that John was making a lot of money, which, good on him, great for the family, great for family life. And it was said that apart from their extremely violent arguments, that their marriage was a bed of roses. It was smooth sailing. They loved it. They just had a great time with each other. Apart from like the violent outbursts and arguments, but you know, they're just like another fly in the ointment, you know, we don't need to worry about them, do we? We do. I let this full coverage concealer dry down too long and now it's really like struggling to blend. So in 1998, Knight and Price, they have a really huge argument because Price basically just doesn't want to marry Catherine. I don't know if he just didn't want to marry her for the moment or if he was like, I just don't want to marry you, full stop. But they had this huge fight over it. So Catherine thought, well, you're not going to marry me, I'm going to get back at you. So she videotapes what was said to be stolen items from John Price's work, and she sent this videotape to his boss. He lost his job because of this, and apparently all it was like these medic kits that were like $20, something like that, like nothing extreme, just these out-of-date medic kits. And it is worth saying that John Price held this job for 17 years and then was fired because of Catherine. Like, that's a hard thing to come back from. Because she had done this, he kicked her out the home the same day, and Catherine moved back to her house whilst the town found out what she had done to John. And she was a rather hated woman because everyone loved John. John was a great guy. He was very likeable, very nice, very kind, a terrific bloke, as people say. And this woman's came in and just destroyed his life. So a few months later, John Price does decide to give Catherine another shot and they restart the relationship under the condition that Catherine can't live with him. She's not allowed to move in with him. That's just the way it has to be. So the fighting between Catherine and John became even more frequent now that they weren't living together, weirdly. And it's so sad, but John Price's friends took nothing really to do with him in the end because of how much they disliked Catherine and they just hated her nature, how violent she was, how aggressive she was. They just didn't want to be around John if she was there. So in February of 2000, a really, really violent argument broke out between Price and Knight, and it ended up with Catherine attacking John Price with a knife and attempting to stab him in the chest. Obviously, when this happened, he immediately got a restraining order against her. And the idea behind this is that although he wanted to keep himself safe, he just wanted to keep his children safe. Towards the end of this month, John Price had started saying to his colleagues that he was really scared for his safety, and he said that if he ever went missing or randomly didn't show up to work one day, that it would be Catherine's fault, that Catherine would have killed him. Like, the fact that he's saying this is just like, it's awful considering what happens to him, but like to live in that kind of fear and actually having to tell your colleagues, like, listen, if I don't turn up, you need to make sure that you let someone know that it's been Catherine. So on February 29th, 2000, John Price does return home to Catherine, and this was against his co-workers' wishes. Like, they literally begged John not to go back to her because they were scared for his safety as well, as much as he was. But he did go back because he was scared that if he never went back to Catherine, that the children would be killed. But John followed his usual routine that night. He checked in with the neighbours, kind of like just general chit-chat, talking about their day, before then going to bed at 11 o'clock that night. Then Catherine did arrive home shortly after John had went to bed. She made herself dinner, she watched some TV, she had a shower, and then she headed up the stairs. And she ended up waking up John, and the two of them had sex, and then John went back to sleep. Do you remember from the start I told you that Katherine Knight always kept her butcher knives either above her bed or on her bedside table, somewhere where they would be handy if she needed them? Well, this night Katherine grabs one of the biggest butcher knives that she has from her bedside table and she stabs John Price 37 times. Now, it is said, according to evidence, he did wake up during the attack and he had actually tried to get downstairs and out of the front door, but it's either like he was too weak and he's maybe collapsed, or he kind of got to the front door and Katherine caught up with him and dragged him back in before he could even go out to get any help. So it's the next day and John hasn't turned up for work. His co-workers are extremely concerned because John said to them, if I randomly don't show up one day, Katherine's killed me. So they immediately alert the police of what John said and that they're concerned for his safety. And the police obviously take this very seriously and they head over to John and Katherine's home, and this is where they would discover one of the most horrific crime scenes ever. So it was said that hours after John Price had died, Katherine then went on to skin his entire body, and she hung the skin up on a meat hook, and it almost looked like a curtain, like a skin curtain, like you would have to go through the curtain to get into the lounge. She had then decapitated John Price and took his head into the kitchen, and the police then went on to find John Price's head was boiling in a pot on the stove with some veg. She had also cooked parts of his body to be served up with baked potato, pumpkin, beetroot, zucchini, carrot, cabbage, yellow squash, and also gravy. And they noticed that there was a note alongside the 2 place settings on the table, and when they looked at the notes, they were the names of his children. She had cooked John Price and was going to let his children eat him. What? And then it was said as well that there was a 3rd plate that looked like it had been Katherine's, and it looked like she had started to eat it, but she couldn't finish it. The police had then found Katherine completely comatose after what they thought would have been like a failed suicide attempt. I think she took like a bunch of pills hoping that it would kill her, but it didn't. It just put her into like a really, really deep sleep. Now, this bit is really strange. So sometimes if you look online, there is reports that say Katherine was found lying next to John's headless body, but then there's other ones that say that Katherine had almost like propped him up with his arm over like a soft drinks bottle. So I don't know what to believe. It could be one of the two. Now, what does Katherine do when she comes to? She tells the police that she has absolutely no recollection of that evening. She doesn't remember doing anything to John. Like, not a clue. She was comatose. What could she have done? Despite her saying this, the police very, very quickly just charged her with the murder of John Price. The fact that his co-workers and things were worried and that he had actually warned them just spoke volumes. So in October of 2001, Katherine's trial did commence, but it didn't last very long because Katherine wound up changing her plea from not guilty to guilty. So the judge adjourned the trial without testimony. Now, Katherine was escorted to prison that very same day, and the judge had wrote on her papers, never to be released. And this was the first time in Australian history that a woman had been given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Now, despite her going to prison and things like that, she does try to say that she has no responsibility for the actions that she had taken that night. This looks crazy. Let me blend that and I'll come back and tell you the rest. Yeah, so she basically still tries to say that she's innocent because she can't accept responsibility for her actions. I don't know if she's kind of going for like the whole insanity sort of thing. Now, Katherine Knight has appealed her sentence and it was denied basically instantly, like immediately. They were like, nah, you've never to be released, hun. And to this very day, she's still serving her life sentence at Silverwater Women's Correctional Centre. So yeah, she ain't ever getting out, thank God. But that is the end of another true crime and makeup episode. I really hope you enjoyed this one, or at least found it interesting. I know it's hard to enjoy when, you know, bad things are happening, but I hope it was interesting. If you have any case suggestions, please leave them down below, or you can forward them to my email if you would prefer. Put it up on the screen now for you. My social media handles will be down below, so that is my Instagram and TikTok, but ultimately just make sure you subscribe, put the notification bell on, maybe leave a like and a comment, it really helps. But I'm here for you 2 to 3 times a week with a new fresh true crime case, and we do a bit of everything here, so nothing's off limits. If you want me to talk about something in particular, just let me know. But But I really hope you enjoyed, and until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye!